Okay, this one wants you to factor the polynomial, and this polynomial is in the ax squared plus bx plus c form, but instead of x's, they used h's, you know, trying to mix things up, you know, because x is an overused letter. But anywho, when you're looking at this, there's several ways you can factor this, but there's one method that's always been tried and true for me, and that is something called the AC method. And I'm putting the AC in quotes because you're literally going to take the A and the C and multiply them together. And when you're looking at this, the A is the coefficient on your squared variable, which in this case would be the 20. And then your C is actually your constant, which is the -9. If there had been a +9 there, I would see it as a +9. So in order to use the AC method, you are going to multiply the 20 times the -9. I'm literally going to take 20 times -9. That would be a -180. And then I'm going to look at all the factors of 180. And this might take me a minute, but 1 times 180 is 180. 2 times 90 is 180. 3 times 60 is 180. Does 4 go in there? 4 times 45 is 180. It ends in 0, so no 5 works. 5 goes in there 30, 15, 36 times. That's 150. Yep. 6 times 30. 7 does not work. 8. Does 8 go in there? No, 8 does not. 9 times 20. 10 times 18. 11 does not work. 12 does. 12 times 15. 13. And 14 do not work, so I found them all. Okay. Now, I did them in order. I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that way when I got to 13, 14, and the next one would be 15, I stopped because I already had 15 over here. So I know I have every single pair of factors of 180. Now, what you're going to be looking for is the pair that will add up to the -24. Now, if these two factors over here, I'm looking at this list right here. These two numbers have to do two things. They have to multiply to give you 180, but they also have to add up to a -24. And since this is a -180, one of these numbers has to be positive and the other one has to be negative. And they have to have a difference of 24. And the winning pair is 6 and 30. If I had a +6 times a -30, that would give me the -180. And if I added a +6 and a -30, that would give me a -24. Now this is what you're going to do. Your 20h squared is still your first term. Your -9 is still your last term. But you're going to take your middle term of a -24 and you are going to replace it with the +6h minus 30h. Because remember, that was a 24h. So got to put the h's on there. This AC method, it's a trick. And what it does is it actually finds what your outsides and insides were when you FOILed it. Because when you're done factoring, you'll get two binomials. And if you want to check your answer, you just FOIL them back. And you can see that you'll have a 20h squared plus 6h minus 30h minus 9. And then you would combine the 6h and the minus 30h to get that negative 24h in the middle. But we're going backwards. So once you have replaced it, you've taken the middle term out, you put outsides and insides back in, and then we're going to factor this by the grouping method from this point on. So everything I did in the beginning was the AC method, but once I have put in those middle terms, the two outsides and insides there, I'm just going to use grouping now. I'm going to factor by grouping. You're going to put them in groups of 2 and factor out a greatest common factor. So from the 20h squared and the 6h, I can factor a 2 and an h from both of those. And when I do, I'm going to get a 10h plus 3. I'm just doing greatest common factoring at this point. Now, on the back half, these two terms, I've got a negative 30h and a negative 9. Whatever sign is right here, that's what you're going to factor out. So I'm going to factor out a negative 3. That's all I can pull out. If you take a negative 30h and divide it by a negative 3, a negative divided by a negative is going to make it a positive 10h. Okay. Didn't mean to write that. And I've jacked it all up. Okay. Boop. And then if you take a negative 9 right here, this negative 9, and divide it by a negative 3, a negative divided by a negative makes it a positive 3. And what I want you to notice is that both sets of those parentheses are identical. You've got a 10h plus 3 here and a 10h plus 3 there. That is supposed to happen. If it doesn't, you've messed up. And what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to factor out the 10h plus 3. I'm pulling that out from this first group and this second group. I pull it out. So what I'm going to be left with is a new set of parentheses that will contain this 2h, which is all that's left from the first group, and this minus 3, which is what's left from the last group. And that's my factored answer. A 10h plus 3 times a 2h minus 3. And if you FOILed it back, first times first, 10h times 2h is 20h squared. My outsides, 10h times a minus 3 is a minus 30h, which is what we had right here, minus 30h. And then your insides are here, positive 3 times 2h. There's my positive 6h, which is what I had right here. And then last times last is a negative 9. And then these two here combine to be negative 24h, which is what I had to begin with. Boy, that's a big old mess. But anyway, one of your factors should be a 10h plus 3, and the other one is a 2h minus 3. And those sets of parentheses can go in either order. It really doesn't matter. Some people like to factor the 10h plus 3 behind because it's behind the 2h and behind the minus 3. So they like to go 2h minus 3 times 10h plus 3. But you know what? Mobius doesn't care. I'm running out of time, but let me see if I can go back real quick and do it. No, I can't. I lost it. Okay. Anyway, that's it. Hope that makes sense. The end.